Right now, somewhere over the Atlantic, a plane is packed with tourists. Over the Pacific, the same thing. Across Europe, families are finalizing summer plans and booking hotels months in advance. Global travel in 2026 is not in crisis. If anything, it's booming. The world has never been more eager to move. And yet, if you walk through the departure lounges of some of America's most iconic airports today, something feels different. The noise is lower. The check-in counters are thinner. The restaurants near the gates aren't turning tables the way they used to. The numbers are real, and they are building into something that this country's $1.3 trillion tourism industry cannot afford to ignore. According to the U.S. Department of Commerce's International Trade Administration, international arrivals to the United States dropped 5.5% in 2025 compared to 2024. The World Travel and Tourism Council estimated that the total spending loss from declining visitor numbers added up to $8.4 billion in a single year, adjusted for inflation. January 2026 came in at negative 3.5% compared to January 2025. And the Congressional Research Service, in a report published just weeks ago, flagged that the country is now heading into its biggest international showcase, the 2026 FIFA World Cup, with inbound tourism still falling. The world didn't run out of money. It didn't lose its appetite for travel. It just started choosing other destinations. And that choice is showing up, very specifically, at 10 American airports. Each one tells a different piece of the same story. By the time you've heard all 10, you'll understand what's actually happening here, and why it matters far beyond the airlines. Let's start with number 10. There is almost no city in America that was more deliberately engineered to receive the world than Orlando. The resorts, the shuttle networks, the theme park infrastructure, all of it was built on a single, confident assumption that families from every corner of the planet would keep showing up. For decades, they did. International visitors don't just fill a hotel room in Orlando. They rent a car, eat 3 meals a day at full-service restaurants, buy merchandise, spend a week or more in the parks, and tip at dozens of places before they fly home. An international family from Germany or Brazil or Japan is an economic event, not just a tourism statistic. You can't replicate that with domestic visitors taking long weekends. So when data confirmed that both New York and Orlando each recorded a 3.8% drop in international air traffic in June 2025 alone, that was noticed. And the Walt Disney Company, which operates the most recognizable theme park on Earth in this city, stated in its first quarter 2026 earnings report that it was facing what it called international visitation headwinds at its U.S. parks. The parks themselves haven't changed. The rides are still there. The weather is still warm. What changed is the calculation a family in the Netherlands or Colombia runs before they book. Visa processes, healthcare costs if something goes wrong, the unpredictability of entry, the question of whether they will be treated warmly once they arrive. When that calculation starts producing answers that point toward Lisbon or Tokyo instead, Orlando's entire economic model begins to strain. A city built for a fire hose of international spending cannot run on a trickle for long. For years, Miami International Airport held one of the most extraordinary streaks of any airport in the country. Year after year of passenger records. A city that had become not just a tourist destination but a genuine hub for Latin American business, culture, and family life. For millions of travelers from Brazil, Argentina, Colombia, and across the Caribbean, Miami wasn't just a place they visited. It was the American city that felt most like theirs. That streak ended in 2025. According to figures released by the airport, Miami International saw approximately 55.3 million travelers in 2025, a 1% decline from 2024. It hadn't experienced a passenger decrease in nearly a decade, excluding the pandemic. Both domestic and international travelers dropped, with roughly 24.8 million overseas arrivals representing a 1.2% fall. In May 2025 alone, international air arrivals were down 10.5% year-over-year, the steepest monthly drop of the year. By June, the international decline continued at 4.5%. Miami isn't losing visitors because its beaches got worse. Hotels in Miami Beach had one of their most difficult years in recent memory. Restaurants in Miami-Dade reported some of their worst summers in years. The airport's own CEO acknowledged the trend was aligned with broader national patterns. Across South Florida, the picture was even sharper at Fort Lauderdale-Hollywood International Airport, where international visitors fell a full 16% in 2025, the first annual passenger decline at that airport since 2013. The Latin American traveler who used to treat Miami like a second home is now running a different calculation. And increasingly, the answer to that calculation is Cancun, Lisbon, or staying closer to home. Las Vegas is a city that doesn't do anything quietly, and so when its airport started bleeding passengers, the numbers were impossible to ignore. Harry Reid International Airport recorded 10 consecutive months of declining passenger traffic through 2025, a streak that hadn't been seen in years. November 2025 was the worst single month, with a 9.6% year-over-year drop and 450,000 fewer passengers than the same month in 2024. International arrivals fell an extraordinary 21.2% in November alone. For the full year, passenger totals were down 5.5% to 50.6 million. The Canadian collapse is central to this story. WestJet, one of Harry Reid's most active international carriers, saw a 29.7% drop in November passengers. Air Canada fell 40%. Porter Airlines dropped 33.9%. These are not marginal fluctuations. These are structural withdrawals by airlines responding to a sustained decline in demand from Canadian travelers. Into 2026, the trend has continued. January 2026 saw nearly 350,000 fewer passengers than January 2025, a year-over-year decrease of roughly 8%. By March, the first quarter total was down 5.14% compared to the same period in 2025. International passengers specifically fell 15% in March, driven again by the sharp cutback in Canadian airline capacity. Las Vegas also removed 82,000 seats for Canadian flights in the first quarter of 2026, even as the city launched promotions like at-par dollar exchange rates at 3 hotels in a bid to win Canadians back. The math tells you everything. Airlines removed more seats than any promotion could fill. Las Vegas sells an experience, not just a location. When the process of getting there becomes stressful, and the bill at the end feels like an ambush, the experience fails before it starts. And unlike cities with diversified economies, Las Vegas has no safety net. The Strip, conventions, and hospitality are it. When all three slow simultaneously, there's nothing behind them to absorb the fall. Phoenix has always been powered by something quieter and more durable than a one-time tourist visit. For decades, Canadian snowbirds, seasonal travelers who spend 3 to 4 months each winter in warm-weather American states, treated Phoenix the way other people treat a second address. They had regular restaurants, standing tea times, property managers who knew their names. The local economy counted on them as reliably as the calendar. In 2024, 20.5 million Canadians visited the United States, bringing $20.5 billion in spending and supporting 140,000 American jobs, according to the U.S. Travel Association. Arizona welcomed approximately 822,500 overnight Canadian visitors in 2023, contributing around $775 million to the state economy. Then the boycott began. Canadian travel to the U.S. fell by nearly 20% in the first 6 months of 2025, according to the U.S. Travel Association. The number of Canadians returning from the U.S. by vehicle dropped almost 33% from January through August 2025 compared to the same period in 2024. Air travel similarly fell 17% in the first 8 months of the year. A January 2026 survey by Longwoods International found that 73% of Canadian travelers who changed their 2026 plans to avoid the U.S. cited economic policies and tariffs as their primary reason. More than 40% said they no longer agreed that the U.S. is a place that welcomes travelers with diverse backgrounds or feels safe to visit. The snowbird relationship wasn't built on promotional campaigns or price incentives. It was built on years of habit, trust, and comfort. And as every study of consumer loyalty confirms, a long-term loyal customer who feels pushed away doesn't respond to discounts. They've already made their decision carefully, personally, and with full clarity about why. What happened in Phoenix is happening in Minneapolis too, in a different register. The cross-border relationship between the upper Midwest and Canada was never formal tourism. It was neighborly commerce. Canadians drove down for weekend shopping. Americans flew north for hockey games. Business travelers crossed regularly because it was simply what you did when the border felt like nothing more than a formality. Minneapolis-St. Paul International was built into that rhythm, a steady, reliable part of the regional fabric. When the rhythm changed, the airport felt it. And when airlines see empty seats on routes between Minneapolis and Canadian cities, the response is immediate and without sentiment. Frequencies get cut. Routes get restructured. A daily flight becomes 3 times a week. A 3 times a week flight gets absorbed into a code-share arrangement that makes it just inconvenient enough that travelers stop choosing it. The economic erosion from this kind of decline is difficult to measure in real time because it doesn't announce itself. It's a slow withdrawal, fewer restaurant bookings, lighter hotel occupancy near the airport, retail reporting softer numbers in the months that used to hum with cross-border activity. By the time the aggregate data catches up to the lived experience on the ground, the damage has already been running for months. Washington Dulles was not built to serve vacationers. It was built for the kind of traveler that a major world power naturally attracts: diplomats, government delegations, researchers, executives, academics, and journalists. The people who come to Washington don't primarily come for monuments. They come to be in the room where decisions are made, partnerships are formed, and the business of global influence gets conducted. That flow is being disrupted in a way that is harder to quantify than missing tourists, but more consequential. In March 2026, Southwest Airlines announced it would end operations at both Washington Dulles and Chicago O'Hare effective June 4, 2026, citing a need to refine its network. Alaska Airlines separately announced route cuts from Dulles, discontinuing service from Los Angeles and San Francisco to Dulles starting in August 2026, citing decreased demand driven by economic uncertainty and a drop in government-related travel specifically. When an international conference moves from Washington to a European city, no press release goes out. But the hotel that hosted it for 15 years notices. The catering company notices. The nearby restaurants and transportation companies notice. More importantly, the relationships that would have formed, introductions becoming partnerships, conversations turning into investment, simply don't happen. As the Congressional Research Service noted in its 2026 report, full or partial entry restrictions now apply to travelers from 39 countries. A June 2025 travel ban suspended visa issuance for nationals of 19 additional countries, and Presidential Proclamation 10998, effective January 1, 2026, introduced further visa suspensions. For the kind of globally mobile professional that Dulles was designed to receive, the message from these policies is unmistakable. Paris, Singapore, and Tokyo are sending a different message. Dulles is feeling the contrast. Los Angeles has always had an advantage no other city in the world could purchase. The global entertainment industry spent a century creating the desire to go there. Every film that showed California's sunshine and possibility was, in effect, a travel advertisement playing simultaneously in every country on Earth. That advantage hasn't disappeared, but it comes with a specific vulnerability. When the reality of arriving in LA diverges from the image that brought someone there, the disappointment hits harder than it would in any other city. And in 2025 and 2026, the gap between the dream and the reality has widened in ways that show up in the data. In 2025, the US was short of approximately 11 million tourists compared to projections, according to reporting by the New York Times citing WTTC research. Los Angeles, as one of the country's primary international gateways, absorbed a share of that loss.